Right now, you are acting as a character. Every drama, every reaction, every argument, every emotion, you are the actor. You are involved, you're provoked, you're losing. But there's another role you can play. It is the role of observer. You have a choice. Switch from participant to observer. That is the key. Observe the drama. Don't get involved in it. Master your reality. That is the observer effect. Chapter 1. Stop being the actor. Become the witness. You've been acting your whole life. Roles assigned by family, society, fear. Performer, pleaser, protector, victim. You step onto invisible stages every day, reciting lines you never wrote. But here's the truth. You don't have to play. You have a choice. 1. The hidden stage. Every conversation is a scene. Every argument, a performance. Most people live inside the play, trapped in constant rehearsal for approval or revenge. They think they're living, but they're performing. Step back. Imagine watching yourself from a balcony above the stage. You see movement, tone, reaction, all without touching the drama. That's observation. That's control. That's the key. When you occupy the observer's seat, emotion stops steering the scene. You stop saying things just to be heard. You start saying things that matter. You stop reacting. You start responding. You have a choice. Stay the actor, forever ruled by the script, or become the witness, the one who writes the next act. 2. The trap of identification. The problem isn't the world. It's your identification with it. The moment you believe this is happening to me, you surrender power. The moment you say, I'm angry, you become the anger. The observer never says, I am. The observer says, I notice. Notice the heat in your chest. Notice the speed of your thoughts. Notice the urge to speak before thinking. Observation severs identification. That's the key. When you notice, you gain distance. Distance gives you leverage. Leverage gives you command. Command gives you peace. This is not philosophy. This is mechanics of mind control. You don't need permission to detach. You only need awareness. 3. The biological lens. Your nervous system doesn't know performance from danger. It reacts to both the same way: adrenaline, cortisol, tunnel vision. That's why arguments feel like combat. That's why criticism feels like threat. You're not weak. You're wired. But wiring can be trained. The observer trains the system to pause. One breath, one mental step back. This pause is the bridge from reactivity to response. That's the key. You feel the surge, but you don't move. You feel the insult, but you don't defend. You let the chemical storm pass. Then you act from choice, not impulse. Each repetition rewires the body toward calm dominance. That's neuroscience serving stoicism. Every time you pause, you're upgrading your internal software. Every time you watch instead of react, you're rewriting the code. 4. The mirror of reality. The world mirrors your internal state. If you're chaotic, everything reflects chaos. If you're calm, everything aligns to calm. Observation changes perception, and perception changes experience. That's the observer effect in practice. Stand still. Watch the room during conflict. Count details, posture, tone, breathing. You'll see patterns others miss. They act, you analyze. They spend energy, you conserve it. They lose clarity, you gain it. This is how observers dominate without aggression. You have a choice. You can fight the mirror or adjust the reflection. 5. The training protocol. Observation is not theory. It's a drill. Train daily. Step 1. Awareness trigger. Catch yourself mid-reaction. When you feel the heat rise, say silently, observe. That's the cue. Step 2. Pause for 3 breaths. Anchor in the present. Watch the mind spin without following it. Step 3. Label the scene, not the self. Say, a reaction is arising, instead of I'm angry. That shift separates you from the storm. Step 4. Choose your move deliberately. Speak slower. Move slower. Act with intent. That's the key. Repeat this protocol until it becomes reflex. The goal is automatic observation under stress. No drama can survive that. When you train the observer, you stop feeding chaos. When you stop feeding chaos, it starves. When it starves, peace appears. This is the quiet dominance of awareness. You're not passive, you're precise. You're not detached, you're deliberate. That's the discipline behind control. 6. The real-world field test. Take any setting, traffic, meeting, argument. Next time chaos unfolds, do nothing first. Watch. Feel the body's urgency to react. Refuse it. Stay in the balcony. Notice the tone of others, the tension, the triggers. See the play from above. Then, when you finally speak or act, the entire dynamic shifts. Why? Because the calmest nervous system in the room always wins. That's the key. Control is contagious. Composure bends reality. People align to the energy that isn't moved by theirs. This is power without noise. This is dominance without display. This is mastery through observation. 7. Identity shift. The actor depends on applause. The observer depends on awareness. The actor fears judgment. The observer studies judgment. The actor is trapped in narrative. The observer writes the narrative. Every role you played, pleaser, hero, rebel, was costume. Remove them one by one. What remains is perception itself. Pure seeing. Pure control. You don't need their permission. You don't need recognition. You need perspective. That's the key. 8. Practical integration. Integrate observation into ordinary life. When scrolling social media, notice emotional spikes before reacting. When listening to gossip, feel the pull to join, then remain silent. When facing criticism, study tone instead of defending ego. Each repetition strengthens the observer muscle. You're building a habit of neutrality. Neutrality isn't indifference. It's efficiency. It saves energy for execution. That's how you dominate reality. Not through control of others, but through control of perception. You have a choice. Every moment. Engage or observe. React or refine. Lose energy or conserve it. Observation wins every time. You were born an observer. You learn to perform. Now you're remembering the truth. You don't need to prove, explain, or defend. You just need to see. Observation ends the play. It silences the noise. It returns authority to its source, you. You've learned detachment. Now it's time to deepen control. Chapter 2. Drama is a trap. Observation is freedom. Drama is energy theft. It looks like emotion. It feels like importance. But it's a trap. The moment you step into it, you lose perspective, power, and peace. You become part of someone else's game. You have a choice. 1. The mechanics of the trap. Drama is built on reaction loops. One person provokes. Another reacts. That reaction fuels the next provocation. Round after round, the energy compounds and control dissolves. This is how small issues become chaos. Drama is self-feeding. It survives only if you feed it. You feed it with attention, emotion, words. Every reply is fuel. Every explanation is surrender. That's the key. When you stop reacting, the loop dies. It can't exist without your participation. The drama ends not because they changed, but because you stop performing. That's how you reclaim control. 2. The biology of drama. Your body doesn't know the difference between argument and danger. The same hormones surge: adrenaline, cortisol, fight or flight. Drama triggers your survival circuits. In survival mode, makes you irrational. When your heart races, your focus narrows. You stop seeing options. You stop hearing logic. You're back in primal defense. That's the trap. The observer breaks this pattern. When you witness the reaction instead of becoming it, your body recalibrates. Breathing slows. Muscles release. Vision expands. You shift from chaos to control. That's the key. Freedom begins in physiology. Calm is your weapon. Stillness is your armor. 3. The social addiction. Drama is cultural currency. People trade it like gossip, like dopamine hits of significance. They bond through complaint. They connect through outrage. They mistake stimulation for meaning. That's why silence threatens them. Your calm feels foreign. Your lack of reaction confuses them. They'll provoke harder to test your neutrality. Don't take the bait. You have a choice. When you refuse the invitation to chaos, you expose the addiction. You reveal who feeds on noise. You reveal who fears stillness. That's the key. Observe the pattern long enough, and you'll see how much of modern interaction is just disguised boredom. People create drama to avoid quiet, because quiet forces self-confrontation. You won't join them. You'll outgrow them. 4. The energy equation. Drama costs energy. Observation creates energy. That's the real equation. Look at your day. Every time you engage in argument, gossip, comparison, you drain your reserves. Every time you observe instead of react, you conserve power. Control of energy equals control of outcome. Here's the law. Where attention goes, emotion flows. Where emotion flows, energy follows. Where energy follows, reality forms. Drama hijacks your attention to build someone else's reality. Observation redirects it to build your own. That's the key. Protect your attention like capital. Invest it only in what compounds peace and purpose. Everything else is theft disguised as urgency. 5. The detachment practice. Here's the practice. Step 1. Pause before you speak. Step 2. Ask, does this require my energy or my awareness? Step 3. If it only needs awareness, stay silent. You don't fix drama by participating. You dissolve it by refusing engagement. This is the art of detachment in motion. Detachment isn't distance. It's discipline. It's not apathy. It's accuracy. It's knowing what deserves your voice and what only deserves your observation. You have a choice. Every moment of irritation is a test. Pass it silently. 6. The mirror principle. Drama mirrors your own unmastered reactions. If you get hooked, it's showing you what still controls you. Anger mirrors pride. Jealousy mirrors insecurity. Defensiveness mirrors doubt. Observation turns the mirror into a map. Instead of resenting the trigger, you study it. You ask, what is this teaching me about myself? That's the key. Every emotional spike is feedback, not punishment, not injustice. Feedback. Use it. Drama becomes training ground. Each trigger mastered is energy reclaimed. Each silence maintained is strength compounded. 7. The 24-hour rule. Here's a rule to reset your nervous system and preserve your dominance. When something triggers you, don't react for 24 hours. No messages, no calls, no posts, just observation. During those hours, emotion collapses and reason rises. What felt urgent will shrink. What felt personal will look neutral. What felt chaotic will reveal structure. That's the key. The 24-hour rule separates amateurs from professionals, reactors from commanders. Use it. It builds a habit of calm dominance that outlasts every temporary storm. 8. The battlefield of everyday life. Your environment is constant theater. Every scroll, every comment, every conversation tries to pull you back into performance. They want reaction, not reason. They want noise, not silence. You're surrounded by traps baited with emotion, recognition, outrage, ego. But traps only work on the unaware. The observer sees them and smiles. That's the key. In meetings, you'll speak less and notice more. In conflict, you'll wait longer and strike smarter. In life, you'll stop playing the game and start reading it. Freedom lives in that shift. 9. From reactivity to authority. Authority is built on stability. The one who can't be provoked controls those who can. That's universal. In nature, in business, in relationships, calm equals power. When others rush, you wait. When others shout, you pause. When others panic, you breathe. You have a choice. The observer leads by restraint, not display. By control, not noise. You dominate reality by staying above reaction. That's the key. You're no longer a participant in chaos. You're the variable that ends it. 10. The freedom of detachment. Detachment is not loss. It's liberation. When you detach, you stop needing others to change for you to have peace. You stop waiting for the world to act right so you can feel right. That's real freedom. Not the absence of pain, but the absence of dependency. You choose calm over conflict. You choose stillness over stimulation. You choose mastery over motion. Every day, drama will invite you back. And every day, you'll decline. Quietly, confidently, consistently. Because now you see it. And once you see, you can't unsee. That's the key. You don't need their permission. You don't need their apology. You need perspective. That's the way out of the trap. Drama loses when you refuse to perform. Observation wins when you choose awareness over reaction. You've learned the first discipline of freedom, detachment through watching. Next, you'll learn how to control the internal battlefield, the physiology behind reaction. Chapter 3. Your nervous system doesn't know reality from role play. Your body is ancient. Your biology is primitive. It doesn't understand the difference between a real threat and a perceived one. To your nervous system, a harsh email feels like a predator. A disagreement feels like danger. A judgment feels like attack. You have a choice: stay enslaved to that wiring or reprogram it through awareness. That's the key. 1. The false alarm system. Your nervous system was designed for survival, not peace. Its job is to keep you alive, not make you wise. It fires alarms at shadows. That's why small stress feels enormous. A delayed message, a raised eyebrow, a social slight. Your ancient circuitry reacts like it's life or death. Adrenaline surges. Muscles tighten. You've entered the illusion of battle. This is where most people lose. They fight phantoms. They spend life reacting to threats that don't exist. They call it personality. It's programming. Observation breaks the illusion. The moment you notice your own activation, you've separated awareness from reaction. You're still feeling the heat, but you're not owned by it. That's the key. You can't stop the initial trigger, but you can refuse to feed it. 2. The trigger chain. A trigger is a link. If you grab it, the whole chain follows. Heart rate rises. Breath shortens. Thoughts accelerate. You spiral. The chain runs automatically unless interrupted by observation. The observer sees the trigger arise and does nothing. That's mastery. You can watch the body's alarm unfold in real time. You can feel the pulse in your neck, the warmth in your chest, the tension in your jaw, and remain still. You have a choice: react or record. Recording the experience rewires it. Each time you endure the surge without response, the brain learns safety. The trigger weakens. That's the key. Your calm teaches the body that no reaction is needed. Repetition makes that calm permanent. 3. The chemistry of chaos. Cortisol is the chemistry of chaos. It floods your system when you interpret discomfort as threat. That's why drama feels addictive. Your brain mistakes stress hormones for significance. Every complaint, every argument, every replay of pain keeps the chemical loop alive. Observation ends it. When you stop feeding the story, the hormones drop, the system resets. Your body follows your focus. That's biology obeying awareness. You can't dominate life if you can't regulate chemistry. That's the key. Stillness isn't spiritual. It's physiological. It's the control panel of power. 4. The awareness protocol. Here's the protocol to regain control of your nervous system. Step 1. Catch the surge early. Notice the first physical sign: tension, heat, shallow breath. Label it activation detected. Step 2. Pause the mind story. No words, no meaning, just sensation. Let the body complete its stress cycle without cognitive fuel. Step 3. Extend the exhale. Double the length. This signals safety to the vagus nerve. Biology follows breath. Breath governs mind. Step 4. Ground visually. Pick one fixed point in your environment and hold your gaze for 30 seconds. It re-anchors your system in present time. Step 5. Respond, not react. Once calm returns, choose your move deliberately. That's the key. You've just replaced thousands of years of primitive wiring with modern awareness. Repeat until automatic. It's not about meditation. It's about control. 5. The body keeps the score, but you write it. Every unobserved reaction leaves residue in the body. Tension, fatigue, anxiety. You feel like life is heavy because your system is carrying years of unprocessed alarms. Observation is detox. When you feel tension, don't run from it. Study it. Ask where? How strong? What shape? You're moving from emotion to information. That's the key. Information breaks identification. You stop being the pain and start learning from it. Each observation releases stored energy back into control. Over time, you'll notice subtle calm replacing constant readiness. You're not becoming numb. You're becoming neutral. Neutral is power. 6. Emotional actors versus nervous system commanders. The emotional actor reacts first and regrets later. They fight to prove, defend, explain. Their nervous system is the director. They obey every impulse. The observer waits, breathes, chooses timing, uses stillness as weapon. That's the key. In any confrontation, the calmest nervous system dominates. People mistake that calm for confidence. It's control. Train biology. You have a choice. Be ruled by chemistry or command it. Freedom begins in physiology. 7. Training under pressure. Observation must be trained under fire. Theory is useless when adrenaline spikes. Practice during daily stress, not ideal conditions. When you're cut off in traffic, watch the surge. When you receive criticism, watch the heat. When plans collapse, watch the panic. This is exposure therapy for the mind. Each successful observation under pressure installs a new baseline of calm. That's the key. You're building a body that obeys awareness, not impulse. After weeks of repetition, chaos feels slower. The world moves, but you don't flinch. That's dominance. Calm under load. 8. Reframing stress as signal. Stress is neutral. It's communication, not condemnation. Your body is saying, attention required. That's all. The untrained mind hears alarm and panics. The observer hears data and adjusts. Same signal, different interpretation. When you reframe stress as feedback, fear evaporates. You no longer fight sensations. You read them. That's the key. Your heart rate becomes a message, not a threat. Your tension becomes instruction, not punishment. You're decoding your biology in real time. This is mastery through understanding. Pain becomes teacher. Stress becomes guidance. Observation becomes freedom. 9. The reprogramming effect. Neuroplasticity is your ally. Every moment you choose observation over reaction, you're reshaping neural circuits. You're teaching your brain that calm equals safety. After weeks, the old reactivity fades. You become the person who doesn't flinch. You don't suppress emotion, you process it faster. That's the key. The modern world calls it mindfulness. Ancient warriors called it discipline. It's the same skill. Control of self before control of circumstance. You have a choice. Stay ruled by default programming, or become the programmer. 10. The observer's advantage. Observation gives you time. Reaction steals it. In that space between stimulus and response lives every strategic advantage. The observer uses that space to read the field, map the variables, choose the leverage point. The reactor fills the space with noise. Stillness is not delay, it's calculation. Silence is not surrender, it's setup. That's the key. Control of biology equals control of behavior. Control of behavior equals control of outcome. That's why calm people win. You don't need permission to be calm. You don't need the world to slow down. You need awareness fast enough to see before you move. That's power. Your nervous system is ancient, but your awareness is new. You can't change your wiring, but you can lead it. You've learned how to command biology instead of obey it. Now it's time to master how that awareness translates into visible control, how to watch without engaging, and dominate through silence. Chapter 4. Build the internal camera. Watch without engaging. You see everything through filters, memory, emotion, opinion, expectation. You think you're observing reality, but you're watching a movie produced by your own mind. Every scene you interpret through ego becomes distorted. Every interpretation steals accuracy. Every reaction amplifies illusion. You have a choice. Stay inside the movie or build the camera that watches it. That's the key. 1. The camera metaphor. Imagine a camera in your mind. It records everything, judges nothing. It doesn't label. It doesn't react. It just captures data, light, sound, movement. That's your goal. To become the lens, not the actor. To see without story. To record without opinion. Every emotional outburst is proof that the lens is fogged. Every judgment is noise in the recording. You're not here to dramatize reality. You're here to document it clearly. Observation is the raw footage. Reaction is the bad edit. That's the key. The clearer the lens, the sharper your control. 2. The corruption of interpretation. Your mind wants to narrate everything. This is good. This is bad. This means I'm winning. This means I'm failing. The moment you assign meaning, you distort truth. Facts are neutral. Only interpretation creates suffering. That's why two people can live the same event. One grows, one collapses. The difference isn't circumstance. It's camera quality. The observer sees what is. The reactor sees what it means. That's the key. When you eliminate interpretation, you eliminate drama. The world becomes signal, not story. 3. The skill of objective awareness. Objectivity is discipline. It's not natural. The ego loves noise. The mind loves narrative. To train objectivity, you must separate perception from projection. Perception is what your senses detect. Projection is what your emotions add. When someone criticizes you, perception says, words were spoken. Projection says, I'm attacked. When a plan fails, perception says, outcome didn't match effort. Projection says, I'm a failure. That's the split. That's the space where power is won or lost. You have a choice. If you stay with perception, you stay free. If you feed projection, you become prisoner. That's the key. 4. The detachment drill. Here's the drill to build your internal camera. Step 1. Observe small triggers first. Traffic delays. Rude tone. Minor mistakes. Notice them as footage, not threats. Say silently. Record, don't react. Step 2. Describe reality in objective language. Instead of that person disrespected me, say they spoke loudly. Instead of this day is ruined, say the schedule changed. This strips emotion from language, which strips drama from perception. Step 3. Check your focus. Ask, am I capturing facts or feeding feelings? That's the key. Step 4. Replay mentally at the end of the day. Review scenes neutrally. See what triggered narrative. Sharpen your awareness tomorrow. This is how cameras evolve, through recalibration. Every day, you wipe the lens cleaner. 5. The observer's voice. The internal voice is loud because it fears silence. But the camera doesn't need commentary. It doesn't say, I can't believe this is happening. It just films. You have to train that stillness. The goal isn't silence of thought. It's separation from thought. You can't stop thoughts, but you can stop identifying with them. Thoughts are clouds. You're the sky. The camera records the clouds, but doesn't become them. That's the key. Every time you watch a thought, instead of following it, you upgrade your lens. Every time you name a thought as thinking, you gain another degree of distance. That distance is freedom. 6. The ego interference. Ego wants to control the image. It hates being watched. It thrives on narrative. I'm right. I'm wrong. I'm special. I'm suffering. That's why building the internal camera feels uncomfortable. When you start observing ego, it resists exposure. It floods you with emotion. It tries to pull you back into performance. It whispers, say something. Defend yourself. Prove you're right. That's the trap. The observer hears the voice, but doesn't obey. You don't argue with ego. You outwatch it. That's the key. Silence is ego starvation. Observation is ego death. What survives afterward is truth. 7. The emotional detachment protocol. Observation without engagement doesn't mean indifference. It means efficiency. When someone yells, you don't absorb it. You record it. When someone blames, you don't defend. You document tone, posture, volume. You're filming behavior, not fighting it. This isn't coldness, it's clarity. It's not distance, it's discipline. You're refusing to be infected by projection. That's the key. In the heat of chaos, say silently, camera on. This command activates your witness mode. It pulls you above the scene. You start noticing details others miss. While they drown in emotion, you collect data. The calmest person becomes the strategist. 8. The data advantage. Data beats drama every time. While others waste energy reacting, you gather intelligence. You see the rhythm of behavior. You notice patterns that predict outcomes. The observer sees cause and effect in real time. The actor only sees personal offense. That's why observers always win the long game. You're no longer surprised by people. You're no longer trapped by emotion. You're studying life like a scientist, not surviving it like a victim. That's the key. Control requires data. Data requires distance. Distance requires observation. You can't fix what you can't see clearly. 9. The 10-second frame. When emotion spikes, insert a 10-second frame. Imagine time slowing. See yourself in the scene. Describe it mentally in third person. He is being criticized. She is feeling tension. They are escalating. This framing removes I from the equation. It replaces immersion with awareness. It transforms subject into object and object into control. That's the key. The 10-second frame reclaims perspective instantly. No argument survives it. No trigger withstands it. Because once you step outside the story loses grip. 10. The mirror check. Your reactions are mirrors. Each time you get pulled into drama, it shows where your camera still blurs. Instead of judging the reaction, study it. Ask, what distortion caused this blur? Fear? Ego? Memory? Then clean the lens. Next time, clarity increases. That's how cameras evolve. not by avoiding storms, but by seeing through them. You have a choice. Complain about the blur or refine the focus. That's the key. The more you watch, the less you're watched by emotion. The more you record, the less you react. This is freedom disguised as discipline. You've built the internal camera, the tool that separates truth from story. Now it's time to apply it under real conditions. When people provoke, pressure mounts, and chaos demands reaction. You'll learn to use observation as a shield and a sword, protecting your mind while cutting through noise. Chapter 5. Observation as Armor. How stillness deflects chaos. The world is loud, unstable, impulsive. People project emotion like weapons. They need reactions to survive. They feed on conflict to feel alive. You have a choice. Absorb their chaos or let it crash and fall. Observation is your armor. Stillness is your shield. That's the key. 1. The physics of energy exchange. Every interaction is an energy transaction. Someone sends intensity. You either receive it or reflect it. If you react, you've absorbed their energy. If you observe, you've neutralized it. This isn't philosophy. It's physics. Energy flows to the most reactive system. Calm systems absorb nothing. They stabilize the field. When you stay still under pressure, you're not passive, you're dominant. You're forcing chaos to meet resistance it cannot penetrate. That's the key. The less you move internally, the more the world moves around you, and the more you see. 2. The emotional contagion effect. Emotion spreads faster than logic. Fear multiplies. Anger infects. Panic cascades. Most people are walking antennas, absorbing signals from every direction. That's why collective hysteria feels magnetic. The crowd's vibration sinks your nervous system. If you're not conscious, you merge with it. Observation breaks the merge. When you watch emotion instead of catching it, your system stays clean. Your calm becomes quarantine. Your stillness stops the spread. That's the key. In chaos, stillness isn't retreat. It's command. You decide which emotions enter your system. 3. The law of emotional gravity. Energy seeks the lowest point of awareness. It flows downhill. Reactive minds sit below. Observant minds rise above. When you engage with anger, you descend. When you argue, you match vibration. When you stay silent, you elevate. And chaos cannot climb. Gravity pulls down those who chase validation. Observation lifts up those who detach. That's the key. The higher your awareness, the less anything reaches you. Stillness creates altitude. Altitude creates safety. 4. The reaction trap. Every provocation has one goal: reaction. If they can get you to react, they own your state. Control of your state is control of your outcome. People don't need physical power to control you, just access to your attention. They throw words, tone, disapproval, expectation, anything to pull a response. Each reaction proves ownership. Each silence proves mastery. You have a choice. The observer doesn't fight back. The observer lets noise dissolve in space. That's the key. Your lack of reaction is louder than any defense. It says, I am not available for manipulation. 5. The eye of the storm principle. Chaos is like a storm, swirling, loud, relentless. The center of the storm is still. That's where control lives. Most people chase calm by avoiding storms. The observer walks into the storm and stays centered. That's mastery. Stillness in chaos is not detachment from reality. It's dominance within it. When you stop running, you realize the wind can't move you. That's the key. The storm feeds on motion. Stillness starves it. Be the eye. Always. 6. The mirror defense. People project what they can't carry. Their anger, insecurity, jealousy. They throw it outward to lighten their own load. If you absorb it, you become their container. If you reflect it, you become their mirror. The mirror doesn't retaliate. It simply shows truth. When you remain calm, you reflect their chaos back to them. They're forced to face it. That's how you end most conflicts without speaking a word. Observation returns projection to sender. That's the key. No one can manipulate a mirror. They only expose themselves. 7. The stillness reflex. Most people flinch. They defend. They explain. They justify. That's the reflex of insecurity. Train a new reflex, stillness. When challenged, pause. When attacked, breathe. When misunderstood, say nothing. That's the key. Stillness disorients aggressors. They expect noise. When none comes, they lose rhythm. You've shifted control without a word. The stillness reflex is learned through repetition. Every time you pause instead of react, you harden your armor. Eventually, nothing penetrates. 8. The aura of unreactivity. True power feels heavy. Not loud, not tense. Heavy because it doesn't move easily. People sense this. They can't explain it, but they feel it. Your calm radiates like a field that slows chaos on contact. That's presence. It's built from thousands of silent victories. Moments where you could have reacted, but didn't. Moments where you absorbed nothing, explained nothing, proved nothing. That's the key. You don't announce power. You emanate it. Stillness is the broadcast of mastery. 9. Tactical silence. Silence is not void. It's signal control. Every time you speak, you reveal calibration. Every word betrays state. Tactical silence uses absence as weapon. When you withhold reaction, others fill the void with their own uncertainty. They reveal themselves while you stay hidden. That's the key. Strategic operators use silence to manipulate rhythm. When the opponent rushes, they slow. When the opponent shouts, they whisper. When the opponent expects defense, they offer none. That imbalance creates leverage. Silence destabilizes those addicted to validation. They'll overextend. They'll show weakness. And you'll still be still. 10. The internal fortress. The final layer of armor is built inside. External calm means nothing if the internal state collapses under pressure. You must reinforce it daily. Start every morning with 3 questions. What can I control today? What can I ignore today? What can I observe today? That's the architecture of mental fortitude. You can't be touched by chaos if your fortress is self-built. No approval needed. No permission given. That's the key. Your peace is your border. Your observation is your defense. Your stillness is your sovereignty. Observation has become your armor. Stillness is now your first response, not your last resort. You've learned to deflect chaos instead of absorb it. You've built an aura that stops emotional contagion and energy theft. Next, you'll learn to use this armor offensively. How observation turns into leverage. How silence bends outcomes in your favor. Chapter 6. Stillness as Strategy. Using observation to control outcomes. Most people waste energy trying to control others. They argue, persuade, pressure, explain. They think movement equals influence. It doesn't. Control doesn't come from motion. It comes from measurement. It comes from observation. That's the key. 1. The law of predictive calm. The world is predictable when you're patient enough to watch it. Behavior follows pattern. Emotions follow triggers. Habits follow repetition. The one who moves less sees more. When you stop reacting, you start detecting. You begin to see the micro-expressions, the pauses, the inconsistencies. You read timing. You read tone. You read tension. While others chase control through words, you gain control through awareness. That's the key. Observation gives you predictive power, and prediction is control. 2. The control chain. Here's how power actually works. Observation creates understanding. Understanding shapes timing. Timing dictates leverage. Leverage controls outcome. Most people skip the first step. They act before they understand. They rush. They force. They lose. You have a choice. Wait, watch, and act when the pattern exposes weakness. That's strategy. That's the key. The observer doesn't move constantly, only decisively. Every action lands with precision because it's informed by data. 3. The invisible advantage. Stillness makes you invisible. People notice motion, not observation. While they talk, you collect intelligence. While they defend, you map their psychology. The loud person exposes strategy through speech. The silent one stays unreadable. That's the advantage. You control others by understanding them deeper than they understand themselves. You can't do that while performing. You can only do that while observing. Stillness creates mystery. Mystery creates authority. Authority creates influence. That's the key. You don't need to chase power. You let it reveal itself through patience. 4. The strategic delay. The untrained mind rushes to fill silence. The disciplined mind uses silence to gather leverage. Every conversation, negotiation, or conflict has moments of tension, brief pauses where the other person expects response. Most people rush to speak, fearing discomfort. That's the mistake. Hold the pause. Let silence stretch. The longer you stay still, the more pressure transfers to them. They start explaining more than needed. They reveal emotion. They make unforced errors. That's the key. Control the tempo, and you control the direction. Stillness isn't stalling. It's bait. 5. The observer's equation. Here's the formula. Awareness times timing equals leverage. Awareness comes from detachment. Timing comes from patience. When multiplied, they produce control that feels effortless. That's why calm people seem lucky. Their observation aligns with opportunity. They strike when others are blind. The equation demands discipline. You can't multiply zero awareness by perfect timing and expect results. You must train the eye before you move. That's the key. Every second spent watching is investment in precision. 6. The reading of people. Observation isn't abstract. It's practical psychology. You can read anyone if you stay quiet long enough. People reveal everything through pattern. Their fears through repetition. Their motives through what they avoid. Their weaknesses through where they rush. The observer collects microsignals until the truth becomes obvious. They don't confront. They predict. They don't accuse. They confirm. That's how manipulation flips. You can't be manipulated when you see before you respond. That's the key. Stillness is not submission. It's scanning. It's reconnaissance before response. 7. The tactical pause before decision. Action taken too early creates regret. Action taken too late creates loss. Observation reveals when action is optimal. The tactical pause is your filter. When pressure demands immediate response, pause 2 seconds longer than comfort allows. In those 2 seconds, you see what others miss. The market reveals its bias. The person reveals their emotion. The problem reveals its flaw. That's the key. Timing turns small awareness into massive advantage. You don't need to act faster. You need to act cleaner. 8. The power of the unreadable mind. The observer's mind is a closed circuit. It emits no signal, no frustration, no validation, no rush. People can't control what they can't read. When your face, tone, and rhythm stay steady, the opponent loses orientation. They start second-guessing. They overreact. They show their hand. That's strategic stillness. That's psychological invisibility. That's the key. Your neutrality disarms manipulation. Because unpredictability is power. 9. Turning silence into command. Stillness isn't just absence. It's stage control. In every room, someone holds the frame. The frame belongs to whoever appears least affected. When you don't rush, you look certain. When you don't defend, you look right. When you don't explain, you look powerful. People interpret calm as confidence. They follow whoever seems unshaken. That's the key. Observation creates command presence. You don't need authority to project authority. You need control of your state. The calmest person in the room always leads the room, whether given the title or not. 10. Observation as active control. Observation doesn't mean doing nothing. It means doing only what's required. Every unnecessary move reduces control. Every deliberate one amplifies it. When you act from observation, you act surgically. You don't waste words. You don't waste effort. You don't waste emotion. Your decisions land like precise strikes because you've already run the simulation through awareness. That's the key. Stillness is control before control. It's the pause before the command. It's the study before the move. Observation first, action second. That's the architecture of dominance. You've learned to weaponize stillness, to turn observation into control. Now it's time to use this control internally. The next chapter shows how to apply observation to your own mind, to dismantle automatic thought, impulse, and self-sabotage. Because the greatest enemy isn't external chaos. It's the noise inside you. Chapter 7. Watching the mind. Mastering internal dialogue. You're not fighting the world. You're fighting your own mind. The external chaos only amplifies what's already inside. The true battlefield is internal. If you can't observe your own thoughts, you can't control your reality. That's the key. 1. The voice in the head. There's a voice talking to you all day. It narrates, judges, predicts, criticizes. It says, you can't do this. It says, they don't respect you. It says, you should be further by now. That voice isn't you. It's the residue of every influence you've absorbed. Parents, teachers, society, fear, ego. You've mistaken the noise for identity. That's the illusion. The observer sees the voice. It doesn't argue with it. It doesn't suppress it. It watches. You have a choice. Obey the voice or observe it. That's the key. Observation breaks possession. 2. The thought-identity split. Most people say, I think, but what they really mean is thinking happens. Thoughts arise on their own. They appear without permission, like clouds drifting through sky. You don't create them. You witness them. The ego hates this idea because it thrives on ownership. It wants to claim every thought as mine. That's why it's fragile. The observer separates awareness from thought. Awareness is constant. Thoughts are temporary. The observer says, a thought appeared. The actor says, I am that thought. That difference defines freedom. That's the key. 3. The reaction loop. Thought, emotion, action, regret. That's the loop. Most people live trapped inside it. A thought triggers emotion. Emotion drives action. Action creates consequence. Consequence feeds more thoughts. Without observation, the loop runs automatically. You become predictable, programmable, reactive. Observation breaks the loop at the first link, the thought itself. When you see the thought forming, you cut the circuit before emotion ignites. That's the key. No thought can control you once it's seen. Vision neutralizes manipulation. 4. The thought labeling practice. Labeling thoughts gives you control over them. It creates distance. It transforms chaos into data. When a thought arises, name it. Fear, comparison, doubt, projection. Don't add story. Don't analyze. Just label. Labeling reduces identification. It turns I'm anxious into anxiety is present. It turns I'm angry into anger is moving. That shift reclaims power. That's the key. You can't manage what you won't name. Label. Observe. Release. 5. The emotional observer. Observation doesn't stop at thoughts. It extends to emotion. When emotion rises, don't fight it. Feel it fully without commentary. Watch the physical sensations, heartbeat, breath, tension. Don't say, I'm upset. Say, heat in chest. Pulse faster. Mind spinning. You've turned emotion into data. That's how you disarm emotional hijack. The moment you name sensation instead of story, the mind loses fuel. That's the key. Emotions are weather patterns. Awareness is climate. The weather changes. The climate remains. 6. The mind as a movie screen. Close your eyes and imagine thoughts projected on a screen. They appear. They disappear. You're not inside the movie. You're in the audience. That's the correct relationship. Watch every scene, but don't enter it. Watch anger appear. Watch fear rise. Watch excitement fade. Let the film roll. The mistake is trying to edit while it plays. You can't. You can only observe. Observation rewrites automatically through awareness. That's the key. The less you interfere, the clearer the mind becomes. 7. The mind trap of why. The ego loves asking why. Why they do that? Why am I like this? Why can't I stop thinking? These questions feed infinite loops. They pretend to seek truth, but only create noise. The observer doesn't chase why. It watches what. What is happening right now? What thought is arising? What reaction is forming? What leads to awareness? Why leads to analysis? Analysis feeds ego. Awareness feeds clarity. That's the key. When you stop interrogating and start observing, the mind calms. 8. The detachment from narrative. The human mind survives on story. Every problem, every regret, every anxiety, all story. Story says, this always happens to me. Story says, if only I had done this differently. Story says, I can't move forward until they apologize. The observer doesn't live in story. It lives in signal, in the direct experience of now. When story arises, say, narrative forming. That's enough to dissolve it. The story loses grip once it's seen as story. That's the key. Detach from narrative and life simplifies. 9. The observer's audit. Each night, review your thoughts like a ledger. Which patterns repeated? Which emotions owned you? Which stories replayed? You're not judging. You're auditing. Awareness grows through measurement. The more you watch, the less you're caught. The less you're caught, the faster you evolve. That's the key. The mind respects consistency. Show up daily with observation, and it begins to obey. Soon, intrusive thoughts dissolve before forming. Emotional spikes flatten. Your baseline becomes calm. That's not accident. That's training. 10. Command through awareness. When observation becomes constant, you gain command. You don't suppress the mind, you manage it. You don't force peace, you maintain position. Thoughts still arise, but they move through space instead of through you. They don't stick, they pass. You're the space, not the content. That's mental sovereignty, the ability to think without being thought by thought. That's the key. From this state, every decision becomes cleaner. Every emotion becomes data. Every problem becomes geometry, angles, not pain. You've turned consciousness into control. You've learned to watch the mind, to separate awareness from thought, to label emotion, to dissolve narrative. Now it's time to extend this mastery into behavior. Because awareness means nothing without disciplined action. In the next chapter, you'll learn to act without attachment, to move through the world with the same calm precision you've developed internally. Chapter 8. Detached Action. Move without losing center. Observation without action becomes paralysis. Action without observation becomes chaos. Mastery lives between the two, movement rooted in stillness. That's the key. You've learned to watch the mind. Now you must move without losing that awareness. To act while remaining the observer. To engage without attachment. To move through life untouched by its noise. 1. The balance between motion and stillness. True control isn't found in stillness alone. It's found in your ability to carry stillness into motion. Most people compartmentalize, calm when meditating, frantic when acting. Their awareness collapses the moment they move. That's weakness. Detached action means you never leave your internal center. You move, but you don't chase. You decide, but you don't cling. You engage, but you don't identify. That's the key. Stillness isn't the absence of motion. It's composure within motion. 2. The discipline of non-attachment. Attachment distorts perception. You attach to outcomes. You attach to approval. You attach to results. And when outcomes shift, you lose balance. The observer never attaches. It acts with full intention but zero dependency. It gives everything to the process, nothing to the result. That's the paradox of power. Full effort, zero expectation. That's the key. When you stop needing things to happen, you gain control of everything that happens. 3. The flow of precision. Detachment sharpens performance. When you're attached, you tense. When you tense, you lose precision. When you lose precision, you fail. Detached action is relaxed focus, fluid but deliberate. Athletes call it flow. Warriors call it presence. Philosophers call it equanimity. It's all the same principle. Full engagement without emotional interference. You move as awareness moves, silently, efficiently, cleanly. That's the key. The body becomes extension of observation. Every movement emerges from clarity, not compulsion. 4. The emotional firewall. The detached actor doesn't suppress emotion. They manage entry points. Emotion arises, but it doesn't hijack motion. You can feel frustration without acting from it. You can feel fear without retreating from it. Observation acts as firewall. Emotion passes through awareness, filtered before it reaches behavior. That's discipline. Emotional neutrality doesn't mean numbness. It means sovereignty. Emotion exists, but you decide its influence. That's the key. Emotion informs motion, but never controls it. 5. The practice of immediate recovery. Perfection isn't real. Presence is. Even a trained observer loses center sometimes. The key isn't avoiding mistakes, it's instant recovery. Detach, don't dwell. Recenter, don't replay. Reset, don't justify. Each recovery shortens downtime. Downtime is where most people lose momentum. They stay lost in emotional noise. You can't afford that. The observer resets within seconds. That's the edge. That's the key. Fall out of center. Return instantly. Repeat until unbreakable. 6. Decision without emotion. Emotion clouds judgment. Desire accelerates decisions that need patience. Fear delays decisions that need speed. Detached decision-making filters both. You remove emotion, assess variables, act. Fast, clear, final. The observer doesn't overanalyze. It sees, decides, executes. No hesitation. No regret. That's precision. Detach from preference. Detach from fear. Detach from hope. Then decide. That's the key. Decisions made in detachment age well, because they weren't born from instability. 7. The art of non-resistance. Resistance creates friction. You fight traffic, people, circumstances, wasting energy. The observer flows through. Non-resistance isn't surrender. It's strategic adaptation. You move with reality instead of against it. You bend, but never break. Water doesn't argue with a rock. It flows around, over, or through, eventually shaping it. That's the model. When you stop resisting, you can serve power. That's the key. Resistance drains energy. Acceptance channels it. 8. The power of impersonal action. You suffer when you personalize everything. You think every delay, rejection, or loss says something about you. It doesn't. It's just motion. The detached actor sees every event as data. Every setback is signal. Every failure is feedback. Personalization blocks learning. Observation accelerates it. You don't need to feel attacked to evolve. You just need to see clearly. That's the key. Impersonal action produces exponential growth because energy isn't wasted defending ego. 9. precision over speed. The world worships speed. The observer worships timing. They're not the same. Speed moves you fast. Timing moves you right. Most people sprint into error. You wait for alignment. Detached action values precision above pace. Because clean execution compounds results. Rushed execution compounds mistakes. That's the key. The observer doesn't rush the harvest. It masters the season. 10. Motion as meditation. When observation fuses with action, every movement becomes meditation. Walking becomes awareness. Speaking becomes awareness. Working becomes awareness. You've dissolved the separation between inner and outer worlds. Now you're never in meditation or out of it. You are meditation in motion. That's mastery. Life stops feeling like a series of reactions. It becomes choreography, deliberate, calm, efficient. That's the key. You move as stillness moves, effortlessly, silently, effectively. You've learned to act without attachment, to move through life with stillness as your foundation. Your actions are now clean, unemotional, precise. You're no longer swayed by external pressure or internal noise. Now it's time to expand this mastery into your interactions, to influence others not by force, but by presence. Chapter 9. Influence through stillness, led without speaking. You don't lead by talking. You lead by holding energy, by holding silence, by holding certainty when everyone else collapses. That's the key. Real influence is invisible. It's felt, not announced. You don't need to prove power. You need to project calm, because calm is control. 1. Energy always leads. Every room is governed by energy transfer. Whoever maintains the most stable energy controls the space. That's the unspoken rule. People mirror what they feel, not what they hear. When you walk in restless, they feel anxiety. When you walk in grounded, they feel safety. When you walk in silent certainty, they feel leadership. You don't need to dominate people. You need to dominate your state. That's the key. Master your energy, and you master the environment. 2. The law of emotional gravity. The calmest person in the room pulls everyone toward them. Tension dissolves around composure. Confusion organizes around clarity. That's why true leaders say less. They understand energy is more persuasive than language. The loudest person rarely leads, they distract. The stillest person directs. When your internal world is quiet, your presence becomes heavy, not in weight, but in gravity. People feel pulled into your field. That's the key. Influence doesn't push. It pulls. 3. Presence over persuasion. Persuasion is manipulation through words. Presence is influence through being. When you're deeply present, people unconsciously relax. They sense steadiness. They sense you're not chasing validation, so they trust you. The paradox, detachment creates attraction, because when you don't need anyone's approval, everyone wants your attention. You have a choice. Convince through noise or attract through stillness. One burns energy. The other creates it. That's the key. Presence wins long before words begin. 4. The power of listening. Most people listen to respond. The observer listens to understand. That's the difference between noise and control. When you listen fully, people feel seen. When they feel seen, they open. When they open, they reveal truth. Truth gives you leverage. The one who talks learns nothing. The one who listens learns everything. That's the key. Listening isn't passive. It's strategic stillness. 5. The art of the controlled pause. Silence is a psychological weapon. Used correctly, it forces others to fill space, to reveal insecurity, to over-explain, to self-correct. In conversation, hold eye contact and let silence stretch half a second longer than comfort allows. They'll rush to speak. In that rush, truth leaks. The controlled pause demonstrates dominance without aggression. It says, I move on my time. It says, I don't chase approval. That's the key. Stillness speaks louder than speech. 6. Neutrality is power. Every argument is a trap. It lures you into reactivity. The observer doesn't step in. When others get emotional, stay neutral. Not detached, composed. You don't mirror their chaos. You regulate it. Your neutrality becomes their stability. People start deferring to you subconsciously because you represent balance. That's how you lead without trying. That's the key. Neutrality isn't indifference. It's command. 7. The mirror effect. People project themselves on his stillness. When you stay silent, they fill the void with their assumptions. They reveal more of themselves trying to interpret you than you'd ever get by questioning them. Stillness becomes a mirror. What they see depends on who they are. Some see threat. Some see wisdom. Some see peace. That's the secret. You control perception not by speaking, but by leaving space for others to expose themselves. That's the key. Stillness reflects truth. 8. The non-reactive frame. Every social interaction is a frame battle. Who defines reality? The reactive person loses instantly. The non-reactive one defines the narrative. When someone challenges you, you have two choices: defend or observe. Defense acknowledges threat. Observation removes it. The moment you stop reacting, you reclaim authority. Because authority is composure under pressure. That's the key. You don't need to prove superiority. You need to demonstrate immunity. 9. Strategic silence in leadership. In leadership, silence has tactical value. You don't need to comment on everything. You don't need to correct every mistake publicly. Strategic silence keeps people guessing. It makes your eventual words heavier. When you finally speak, attention spikes. That's how authority compounds scarcity of voice. People listen more when you speak less. That's the key. Noise devalues power. Silence concentrates it. 10. The language of stillness. Stillness communicates through microsignals: posture, breath, eye contact, tone. Each signal broadcasts self-control. Steady breath says, I am not rushed. Relaxed shoulders say, I am not threatened. Measured voice says, I am in control. That's silent language. It precedes words. It defines hierarchy before conversation begins. You don't tell people you're composed. You show it through stillness. That's the key. Influence isn't declared. It's demonstrated. You've learned to influence without force, to lead without speaking. You understand that stillness projects confidence, attracts trust, and commands attention. You've learned to listen strategically, to use silence as leverage, to define the frame by staying unshaken. Now it's time to turn this external control inward once again, to detach not only from emotion and reaction, but from identity itself. Because the final level of observation is the one who watches the self disappear. Chapter 10. Beyond the self. The observer becomes the reality. You've mastered detachment from chaos. You've mastered control of emotion. You've mastered stillness in motion. Now, you face the final illusion, the self itself. Everything up to this point has been training for one truth. You're not the character you play. You're the awareness watching it. That's the key. When you understand this, domination becomes effortless. Because the one who observes the self cannot be dominated by it. 1. The self is fiction. The self you think you are, the name, the story, the history, the preferences, is a mental construction. It's not permanent. It's not solid. It's narrative. The self says, I am this kind of person. The observer says, there's a story being told. The self fears loss, failure, and death. The observer only sees change. When you stop defending the self, conflict ends. You can't offend awareness. You can't threaten the watcher. That's the key. Freedom begins when identification ends. 2. The death of identification. Identification is the glue between thought and suffering. The moment you identify with anything, your job, your title, your opinion, you've given away power. You've said, if this changes, I'm less. That's dependence. That's fragility. The observer breaks that contract. It sees everything as temporary roles being played in an infinite game. You're not the actor. You're the stage. The ego fights this truth because it fears erasure. But erasure isn't death. It's liberation. That's the key. When you stop identifying, you stop suffering. 3. The mind's last trick. As awareness deepens, the mind becomes subtle. It hides behind thoughts like, I'm observing well, or I'm becoming enlightened. That's still the ego, just wearing spiritual clothing. The observer doesn't need recognition. It doesn't need progress reports. It doesn't even need to improve. It simply is. Be careful not to turn awareness into identity. The moment you claim, I am the observer, you've lost it again. Awareness doesn't claim anything. That's the key. True observation has no commentator. 4. The illusion of control. Control was the training tool, not the final goal. You needed control to stabilize. But once stability is natural, control becomes unnecessary. The observer doesn't control thoughts or outcomes. It allows them. It doesn't force peace. It notices disturbance until it dissolves. It doesn't demand order. It recognizes the pattern inside chaos. That's the paradox. The highest control is surrender. The more you release control, the more control you have. That's the key. Domination through awareness replaces domination through will. 5. The field of awareness. Awareness isn't inside you. You're inside it. Your body, thoughts, emotions all appear within awareness. They rise, they fall, they vanish. But awareness remains constant. You don't carry awareness. Awareness carries you. Every sound, sight, and thought happens in the field, not to you. When you see this, stress evaporates. Because there's no longer a you being attacked by life. There's just life unfolding inside awareness. That's the key. Reality and awareness are one continuous field. 6. The observer without a center. Most people think awareness has a center, a me, watching the world. But look closer. Can you find a watcher? Can you locate the observer behind the eyes? Search deeply and the searcher disappears. Because there was never a watcher. There was only watching. Awareness isn't a person. It's a process. It's not someone being aware. It's just awareness being. That's the key. When the center dissolves, boundaries dissolve. You become vast. 7. The end of resistance. Without identity, there's nothing left to protect. And when there's nothing to protect, resistance ends. You stop fighting the moment. You stop fighting people. You stop fighting outcomes. Life flows through you like air through an open window. This doesn't make you passive. It makes you precise. You act without inner friction. You decide without inner debate. Because the one who resists has disappeared. That's the key. Freedom isn't control. It's the absence of resistance. 8. Effortless living. Effort comes from separation. You believe there's you in life. So you push. You pull. You struggle. When the observer becomes the reality, effort ends. Life acts through you, not by you. Your speech becomes clean. Your timing becomes perfect. Your actions synchronize with unfolding events. That's not magic, that's alignment. When there's no resistance, everything moves in precision. That's the key. Flow isn't achieved. It's revealed. 9. Power without ego. Ego seeks to use power. Awareness simply is power. Ego says, I will become strong. Awareness says, strength moves through this body. Ego says, I am successful. Awareness says, success appears, then fades. Ego depends on outcomes. Awareness transcends them. That's why true masters seem indifferent. They've stopped feeding identity through achievement. They operate in calm authority, not ambition. That's the key. Ego fights for power. Awareness is power. 10. Returning to the world. Eventually, the observer must return. You still live in a world. You still interact, build, and lead. But now you know what you are. You're not the noise. You're not the story. You're not the character. You're the space all of it happens in. That understanding changes everything. You can play every role, leader, parent, warrior, creator, but none of them own you. You can experience every emotion, joy, loss, pain, victory, but none of them define you. That's the highest state, engagement without entanglement. That's the key. You've dissolved the boundary between you and the world. Now you act as the world itself. You've moved beyond reaction, beyond attachment, beyond identity. You've become the observer, not separate from reality, but identical to it. From this place, nothing external can disturb you because there's no you left to disturb. Only awareness, only clarity, only motion inside stillness. You've learned that domination is not about control. It's about alignment. You've learned that strength is not about resistance. It's about awareness. And you've learned that freedom is not about escape. It's about presence. You've returned to the beginning, but this time, you see everything differently. You're not the player anymore. You're the entire game. That's the observer effect. Detach from drama. Dominate reality. By becoming it, you've spent hours learning how to step back from the noise. Now it's time to live it. You know that every reaction steals control. Every attachment drains energy. Every complaint fuels chaos. You know awareness is the ultimate weapon. Observation without reaction, focus without emotion, clarity without noise. You have learned to observe instead of pursuing, to listen instead of arguing, to act without losing your balance, to lead without speaking. You have learned that silence commands, presence persuades, and distance dominates. This is your new discipline. Observe more, speak less, act with greater clarity. Maintain your composure under pressure. Maintain awareness amid chaos. Maintain stillness amid movement. From this moment on, you stop playing the reaction game. You become the one who defines the field. You stop being moved by circumstances and begin to steer your reality toward alignment. You have a choice. Remain confused amid the noise or rise above it. Continue acting or begin observing. Live as the character or return to the stage itself. Detach yourself from the drama. Master reality, not by force, but by presence. Not by noise, but by awareness. Because the supreme power is not control. It is awareness. And now you are that.